Welcome back to Watchtower Down. Today I'm not going to pull any punches. Today we're going to look at something the culture almost never does. We're going to stop treating atheism like a serious position because it isn't. Now you've probably noticed that most debates between atheists and theists get bogged down in lots of details. They do quote mining, play a lot of word games, come up with half-remembered science lectures. But what I want to do is cut straight to the heart. Atheism isn't just wrong. It's logically impossible. It will collapse on itself the moment you test it against the most basic rules of reason. How about the law of non-contradiction, the law of causality, or even your basic reliability of your sense perceptions? You don't need a Bible in your hand to see this. You just need a brain that hasn't been rotted out by YouTube debates, Reddit, and a college degree. So let's start with the most overused and least intelligent atheist question. Well, who created God? Atheists think that this is being clever. They imagine that they've discovered some sort of logical trap. If everything needs a cause, then God must need a cause too. Ha 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 ha. Well, here's the fatal flaw in that thinking. As far as I know, no serious theist has ever said everything needs a cause. The theist position is everything that begins to exist has a cause. And this is basically the logical law of causality, which you don't even need to be a theist really to know about because it is a logical law. And so the law stated as all effects must have causes. It's really that simple. If something begins, there must be something prior to it that brought it into being. God, however, by definition, is eternal. He doesn't begin. You can't apply rules meant for contingent finite things to the very thing that grounds existence itself. But even if you did, God doesn't violate it because he doesn't begin. Therefore, he's not an effect and he doesn't require a cause. Think about it like this. What the atheist is really doing is he's trying to ask you, when did a circle become a square? Or what flavor is the number 7? This question in itself is completely incoherent. It doesn't reveal anything other than the fact that the atheist is confused. So when an atheist demands who created God, all they've really done is reveal that they don't actually understand the categories. It's not a middle school gotcha. It's not an argument. And yet they keep using it as if a self-contradiction suddenly makes sense if you just repeat it loud enough. Next, let's talk about this other smug thing that atheists like to say. Well, Christians reject Zeus, Thor, and Ra. I just go one god further. Ha 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 ha. So this sounds witty until you stop to really think about it. The pagan gods, even in their own definitions, were finite beings. The pagans have gods that get married, give birth, kill, die, get destroyed. All of these things are basically just taking human ideas and turning them into gods. There's really nothing godly about any of the pagan gods. They're basically just humans with magical powers. They were actually imagined as part of the universe, subject to its laws. They're not eternal, they're not necessary, they're not even absolute. Rejecting Zeus is no more different than rejecting unicorns, or Bigfoot for that matter. However, the God that we're talking about isn't one more creature inside the box of the universe. He's the very reason the box exists. He's not on a list of beings. You don't line him up next to Zeus or Apollo. He's literally the ground of being. The contradiction here is obvious. Atheists pretend that they're just being consistent. Well, I'm just going to go one further. But in reality, they've completely switched categories. They compare the contingent with the necessary, the finite with the infinite. And of course, this is a violation of the law of non-contradiction. You can't equate unlike things and then pretend the argument is sound. It's not. This is like saying, I don't believe in monopoly money, so I reject real money too. I mean, it's a cute line, but you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage with it. This one always makes me laugh. There's no evidence for God. Ha ha ha. Well, first off, evidence just means that which points to a rational conclusion. It doesn't mean lab experiments only. Historical evidence counts, logical evidence counts, and the very fact that the universe exists at all definitely counts. But here's a deeper problem. When the atheist says there's no evidence, what they actually are saying is there's no evidence that they are willing to accept, because there's tons of evidence. They just filter out all categories of evidence except the ones that already confirm their bias. So that's not really sound thinking. In fact, it's kind of self-refuting. Worse, the claim contradicts itself. If there's no evidence for God, then why are atheists constantly debating about him? I don't believe that leprechauns exist, but I don't spend time going online arguing with people that leprechauns don't exist. Well, why? Well, simply because I know leprechauns don't exist, and therefore anybody running around saying they exist is not really worth my time. Why write books, make memes, and argue for hours about something you're certain doesn't exist? I mean, really, who would spend their life trying to disprove the tooth fairy? You don't seem like serious philosophers, especially if you're trying to waste your time proving the existence or non-existence of leprechauns. So the evidence is everywhere. The existence of order, causality, consciousness, morality, mathematics, a finely tuned universe. To deny this is all just to deny the reliability of your own sense perception itself. Now, the atheist says, well, I only believe in things that I can see and taste and pass through my small intestine. Okay, well, that's great. But where do you see logic? How do you see the law of non-contradiction? How do you actually see that your senses are basically reliable? Where do you see causality? Where can you see morality? Does morality even exist if you can't see it? Where do you see numbers? Can you actually see numbers, or are they just an idea? Well, basically, you don't. You don't see any of these things. However, you use them every single day. And that's kind of the point. In order for these things to exist, you don't have to be able to see them. I can't see atoms, but I believe they exist. Now, how about this stupid one? Religion causes all wars. So this is stupid because, number one, whether religion is true or not has no bearing on whether or not God exists. God could exist and all religions could be false. It could be true all religions cause war, in which case you have to ask yourself, well, is that bad? Do these religions represent God? I'm not arguing that religion isn't stupid. Most religions are stupid. In fact, most religions don't reflect God at all. So the idea that all wars are caused by religions is basically pretty stupid if you're going to use that as an argument against the existence of God. However, having said that, for the most part, unless you count atheism as a religion, the statement itself is historically false. The bloodiest regimes in world history have all been atheist regimes. Stalin's USSR, Mao's China, Pol Pot's Cambodia, explicitly atheist. These regimes all persecuted the church. Together, they killed more people in a single century than all so-called religious wars in history combined. Now, that's a factual statement. That's not my opinion. It's something you can go look up. Now, of course, there's a whole other problem here, and that is, even if religion did cause conflict, that doesn't prove atheism's true, as we mentioned earlier. That's just a genetic fallacy, confusing the origin of an effect or belief with its true value. And thirdly, it's self contradictory. If atheism is true, then morality is just a human preference. And if morality is just a preference, then who's to say whether wars are bad? They're just a clash of preferences. So atheists borrow moral outrage from the very worldview that they're trying to reject. They complain about evil while denying the framework that makes evil meaningful. Now, of course, this is another violation of the law of non-contradiction, and that is, you can't denounce something as objectively wrong while claiming that the thing that makes it objectively wrong is a fantasy. Morality can't be subjective if anything is wrong. And of course, this brings us to the tired statement that just drives me insane every time I hear it based on its sheer stupidity. Well, I believe in science and not faith. This is one that you really hear from some idiot with a college degree who doesn't even understand what his major is. First, science presupposes faith. Wait, what? Yes. Every time you run an experiment, you're trusting that nature is consistent, that logic works. You have to affirm the law of causality. You have to affirm non-contradiction, and you have to affirm the basic reliability of your senses. If you don't have those three things, you can't do any science. You can't do any experiments. And these assumptions can't be proven by science. They're preconditions for doing science. If you don't believe them, you cannot do science. So when an atheist boasts, "Oh, I only believe in science," they're sawing off a branch while they sit on it. Science rests on non-empirical philosophical commitments that are self-proven. Faith isn't the opposite of science. It's what makes science possible. Atheists reject faith, yet every experiment, every theory, every equation that they espouse assumes faith in causality, non-contradiction, and of course, the basic reliability of their sense perception. They are mocking faith while practicing it. I mean, that's kind of like saying, I only trust words, but not grammar. Yeah, okay, well, good luck with that. Then, of course, there's the famous one that also isn't true, but you hear it all the time, and even if it is true, it's not particularly relevant. Atheists always love to say that, well, the Bible is full of contradictions. And then, of course, you ask them to show you some, and typically they can't. However, there's a few tough passages in the Bible, but we're not going to get into those right now. In general, you can boil them down to differences in details. Like one account mentions that there's one angel present, and another one says there are two. Well, guess what? That's not a contradiction. That's just valuable perspective. If I say I saw two police officers at the scene, and you say I saw one officer talking to the driver, those aren't contradictions. Those are complementary accounts. It's very possible that we could both be at the same scene and I saw two officers and you only saw one. The deeper issue is atheists demand total uniformity as proof, but if they had it, they'd call it collusion. Heads they win, tails you lose. It's logically impossible to even satisfy their ridiculous demand. And again, of course, the law of non-contradiction. A contradiction would be saying there was only one angel, but there was no angels. And that's a contradiction, but only if you mean it in the same way and in the same relationship. An angel cannot be an angel and not be an angel at the same time and in the same place. The only way you can do that is if you equivocate language. So by saying there was one angel speaking and there were two angels present, that's not a contradiction. That's just normal human testimony that you would actually expect anytime more than one witness witnesses an event. Here's another one of my favorite stupid things that atheists like to say, and this one's kind of slippery. Well, atheism isn't a belief, it's just a lack of a belief. Okay, well, the bottom line is no, it isn't. Atheism makes a truth claim that there is no God, and then atheists invest all kinds of time going around as evangelists for this ridiculous belief. So it is a belief. Atheism is basically a religion. Redefining it to dodge responsibility that it's a religious belief is just playing word games. It's word salad. It's nothing more. If atheism was a lack of belief, then rocks are atheists because they don't have any beliefs. As far as I know, chairs are atheists because they don't have any beliefs. Does this mean toddlers are atheists? Because if you ask them who made the sky, they can't answer it? I mean, obviously, this is stupid. You can't build a worldview on negation. You can't say, oh, I don't collect stamps, therefore stamp collecting doesn't exist. The absence of a claimed belief is not the same as a reasoned conclusion. Atheists pretend they've escaped the burden of proof, but the reality is all they've done is retreat into their own incompetence and incoherence. How about this one? The flying spaghetti monster. Oh, yeah, well, you believe in God. I believe that there's a flying spaghetti monster. It's just a whole bunch of nonsense. So atheists love to mock the belief in a God by inventing silly deities. But the whole point of theism is that God is necessary. He is the ground of existence. A spaghetti monster is contingent on the psychotic brain that invented it. It's made up of parts that exist inside the universe. Can't compare the necessary with the contingent without making logical violations. You can't say gravity is just like unicorns. Well, no, it isn't. One is a necessary attribute of the universe in order for the universe to exist, and the other is probably a bedtime story. So atheists claim to be rational, but then they mock necessity with contingency. That's not logic. I mean, that's basically like a comedy skit. It's not even good comedy because most of these atheists are humorless. Except for Christopher Hitchens. He was pretty entertaining, but he was still wrong. And of course, now that he's passed, he certainly knows that his atheism was a false religion. Well, they also like to propose the position that they can be good without God. And this one sounds like they're being noble. However, without God, there's no such thing as good. Morality collapses into competing preferences. Stalin preferred gulags. You might prefer Netflix. Without a transcendent standard, who's to say that one is better than the other? Atheists demanding objective morality while denying that there could be a foundation for it is just ridiculous. They want to believe that murder is wrong. Well, okay, but wrong by whose standard? By evolution? Evolution says the survival of the fittest. So if you use that logic, genocide is just accelerated natural selection. Atheists want to smuggle in moral categories from a worldview that they despise while pretending that makes them free, logical thinkers. This is like stealing money from your parents' wallets and then bragging that you're living life independently. It's utterly absurd. If you examine the ridiculousness of atheism, it's going to collapse under its own weight. It violates causality by pretending the universe just popped into being. It violates non-contradiction by equating the finite with the infinite, with morality with preference, evidence with blindness, and it undermines the very reliability of sense perception by demanding proof for things where proof is self-evident. In short, atheism really isn't a worldview. It's more like a religious tantrum. It's a contradiction in search of an audience. The existence of God is as obvious as the air you breathe. the ground you're standing on, the mind that you think with, or if you're an atheist, that you don't think with. You don't really need a Bible to see it. You just need to open your eyes and stop lying to yourself. Atheists want to say there is no God. And then 2,000 years later, they're still saying it, still contradicting themselves. And of course, they're still wrong. And they're still deserving of this mockery and not respect. Well, that's all for today on Watchtower Down.